If you understand the developmental origin of the pituitary gland, it makes a lot more sense. It makes it a lot easier to learn this. So we're looking at a mid-sagittal section of a 4-week-old embryo, and this brown area is the brain. And you can see that there's an outgrowth developing off of the inferior surface of the brain, which is actually an elongation of axons of neurons that are originating up in the hypothalamus. At the same time, the oral cavity is forming, and here you can see a pouch of tissue forming off of the roof of the mouth. That epithelial tissue pouch actually pinches off of the roof of the mouth and goes up and adheres to that downgrowth that was coming down from the hypothalamus. And keep in mind, this is at a time when the bone has not fully developed. The sphenoid bone will develop around this area, and the pituitary gland is found in the sella turcica. That downgrowth that originated from the hypothalamus is the posterior pituitary. It's made out of a collection of axon terminals of the neurons that are originating up in the hypothalamus. And the anterior pituitary is a collection of epithelial cells that originated from the roof of the mouth. Because of these different origins, the anterior and the posterior pituitary are regulated in different ways. Let me show you. So this picture shows us a lot more detail. Let's see if this makes sense. There are two groups of neurons in the hypothalamus, the supraoptic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus. A nucleus in this sense just means a collection of neuron cell bodies within the central nervous system. And those groups of neurons have axons that extend into the posterior pituitary, or the neurohypophysis. The axons of those neurons are contained within this stalk called the infundibulum that connects the pituitary gland to the hypothalamus. So, understanding this, it makes sense that the posterior pituitary is controlled by the hypothalamus through these groups of neurons, that if these groups of neurons sense a stimulus that will cause release of the hormones from the posterior pituitary, oxytocin or ADH, that stimuli would cause action potentials within the group of neurons, and the hormone is released from the axon terminals into the blood. Now with the anterior pituitary, remember that had a completely different origin. Here's the anterior pituitary, the pink cells, and this area originated off of the roof of the mouth, this epithelial tissue. And so the only anatomic connection that you can see on this picture between the anterior pituitary and the hypothalamus is the blood supply, which is known as a portal system. So a portal system is where you have capillaries that lead into another capillary bed. So here's a capillary bed within the hypothalamus, and it leads into a second capillary bed that's right around the anterior pituitary. And so the way the hypothalamus controls the anterior pituitary is by releasing hormones that are called releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones that enter into the hypophyseal portal system, circulate to the anterior pituitary, cause release or inhibit release of hormones from the anterior pituitary.